Hello and welcome to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host, and we are here in studio finally after 4 years of remote. It's good to be back. We have as our guest one of our favorite people, Martin Brook, who is the Bloomfield Township Clerk. You think voting in the election is a lot of fun? Try running it. At any rate, your township clerk, guy in charge of running the elections,
Yes,
and
sir.
there's another one on, and it's a biggie, maybe the biggiest lately. So what's going on?
Well, elections are an all-year event, so we've been working on this and preparing all year long. We don't just drop in on election day and have people show up and run a precinct. It is more complex than ever because of what literally is bespoke voting. People can vote absentee, they can vote early, they can vote on election day, they can take their absentee ballot and vote that.
Bespoke voting, I like that.
Voting. There's so many options, which is good. So there's no excuse for someone to not vote. I want 100% of our eligible voters to vote. Why not?
Why not?
Right.
Well, elections are always, I always figure, especially these big ones, are kind of like planning D-Day. You need to organize and deploy enormous resources. It wasn't just Eisenhower. It was even the guys pushing papers. So,
Right.
how do you organize and plan it all?
Well, I have a great team. There's 5 of us who are regularly working, including myself. And there are 300 additional people that will be working on this election.
That's an army.
It's a lot. And everybody here, we have a lot of volunteers. People have been doing it for year after year, which is really fabulous. And we train them. We prepare them with all the documents they're required to do the task. And because people come back year after year, we have some experienced people that each precinct has and they can draw upon to make sure the day goes as smoothly as possible.
Now, as far as training, is it too late for us to call for volunteers now?
Oh,
Because
100% too late, yes.
It is too late.
Yeah, it's been about a month since people knew their assignment.
Uh-huh.
And we have staffed for dropouts. In other words, we have 8 people per precinct. We can really run it with 6 or 7. We have 8 because, look, someone may have something come up, an issue in the family. Maybe they're ill. We tell them, look, if you're not feeling well, it's okay. Don't come. Don't just don't drag
Please,
yourself in.
Please, don't come get everyone else sick.
So right now, we've had very little dropouts, which is fairly common for the presidential election. Everybody, who volunteers to do this, I mean, we do pay them, but look, people are doing this because of their volunteer spirit, not for the $100. They're not dropping out. They all like to do the presidential election. So it's the big time, right? It's like going to New York City. Here we are, presidential election.
It is the big time, no doubt about that. So now, how long and what steps does it take to? I mean, my wife worked at the opera for 20 years, and she worked in theater her whole term. So I've always been fascinated by the backstage part of it. The movie A Hard Day's Night, with it all, showing the backstage, is one of my favorites. So what are the backstage stuff that it takes to make it happen?
Gosh, I don't know where to start. It's a multi pronged process involving multiple different parties. So the state is involved. It provides and programs the qualified voter file.
So imagine you're Santa Claus waking up on December 26th thinking, right.
Yeah, right. Uh-oh. I didn't plan. I didn't make my list.
The day after. It's
so,
the day after, and now we got to worry about next Christmas.
Right? And it's an ongoing process. So the qualified voter file and instructions from the Secretary of State to implement new laws come down to the county clerks and the municipal clerks. The qualified voter file has a record of every voter. It's great, but it's not great too at the same time. It has serious limitations, which puts a crimp in our style. We have to figure out workarounds. It goes down on occasion. But it does provide all the data we need. So that's up to the state. The county level, they also have important roles. For instance, they're the ones that are responsible to order the ballots and get us the ballots on time. We help to proof the ballots to make sure they're right. That happens for November election. That happened at the end of August, and then they're sent to the printers. And they're only approved printers that can do this. And they're under a legal obligation, of course, to just provide these ballots to the county clerk and the municipal clerks. At that point, we're starting to assign ballots because we have to know the ballot ranges and the ballot numbers because each ballot, as you know, has a stub on the top with a number on it. Every single ballot that goes out the door is assigned to a specific person and is therefore live at that point. And we can track using that number when we sent it, when it was returned, whether it was accepted for counting or whether it was rejected. People can also track that themselves on. Here it is.
What you got? Show. Let's see this.
MVIC, which is the Michigan Voter Information Center.
MVIC.
MVIC.sos.state.mi.us. You can register to vote there, apply for an absentee ballot, track your absentee ballot, learn more about your polling location, a whole bunch of more stuff. It's it's very powerful. Maybe not the most user-friendly site, but I encourage folks to go there and check it out. So we have so far issued 17,705 ballots to individuals who completed an application, and we verified their signature.
And those are applications for the absentee ballot.
Those are the actual ballots. Yeah.
Okay, but you are responding how it works. Let's say I go into the polls. I just like to do that. But there are, let's say I sprain my ankle and I don't want to go do it. So what I do is I apply for an absentee ballot in the county, and that's when you send me a ballot.
Correct. So you can apply per each election, or you can apply once and we receive a ballot always, which is the permanent mail ballot list. That's a new feature. Mm-hmm. We have 15,000 people on the permanent mail ballot list. So they applied once, they signed it, we reviewed the application and matched the signature to the signature on file, and then we're automatically getting a ballot mailed to them for this election. Mm-hmm. There are thousands of additional people that apply, like in your example. I'm traveling, sore knee surgery, whatever. No reason is actually needed, but in your case, you'd prefer to vote in person. So, absent a good reason in your mind, you would be in the precinct. So, we get thousands more of those.
I go for the sticker,
Right. We have some new stickers too, by the way. I should have brought some of those. They're really cute, done by students. But once we review that signature, we accept that application, we assign a ballot to that person, there's a specific ballot number, and then it's mailed to them, or they could pick it up over the counter, which is a very common way that people are doing ballots each election. I can tell you as of this morning, 583 people have come in my office, filled out their application for an absentee ballot, and it was delivered to them over the counter after they showed identification.
You've got to show ID.
In person, you must show ID or complete the affidavit of a person not being in possession of ID. And by the way, hardly anyone does that. Last election, I think it was 6 people out of 15,000 votes. It's very small number of people who complete the affidavit.
The affidavit.
And then in my office, they can vote the ballot right there and return it to us, which is a common way that people do it.
I think I did that for the primary in Birmingham. I think I just went into in City Hall, took a left. Now, if you take a right, you got to go pay your parking tickets. But if you go to the left, you go to the clerk. And I think I just took the thing and I just filled it right out and put it in, just right there.
Right.
Because I knew I was going to be out of town.
100%. It's easy. In my office, we're open 4 days a week, 7 to 5:30. We do have additional hours. This coming Friday, we're also open Friday afternoon, noon to 5. And then the following Friday, we're open noon to 5, and we're open Saturday before Election Day all day. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of opportunities to come in the office and vote. Bloomfield Township is of course what we're talking about here. The city of Birmingham is a little has different hours. I'd have to check with them to see what those are.
Yeah, the city of Birmingham. You can get on the website. I believe it's all 5 days, and like I said, and you can pay your parking tickets at the same time. But you
don't have to. You can vote without paying your parking ticket too.
I would recommend paying the parking tickets first, but trust me, it goes up fast. Not that I get a lot of them.
The other thing that's going on is we're really busy getting ballots back already. So we've mailed out the 17,705 ballots. We received back 7,081 ballots already, which is 40% of what we mailed out.
Wow. How many voters are there in total?
38,000.
38,000. I know. That's the big dog. Back when Birmingham and the township used to be part of the same district, the township was always the bigger dog.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact number is. It's not quite double. Not quite double in size. Maybe 75% larger. But
Yeah, we got
they're
the
both-
parks. But yeah, so
I know.
Hey, so now voting. Yeah, once again, all the ways that you can vote. Like you said, there's no. I mean, there's in person, like walking in, like I do, into the polls, absentee, drop off, any others.
Early voting.
Early voting.
That starts this coming Saturday. It's at the Bloomfield Township Library. It is the early voting site for 3 municipalities: Birmingham, Southfield Township, and Bloomfield Township. All vote early at the Bloomfield Township Library. Lone Pine and Telegraph.
Lone Pine and Telegraph.
Right. And
Yeah.
those are 8:30 to 4:30 every day, except for Thursday, it's noon to 8:30. Noon to 8.
We got to be sure. I mean, there's really, like I said, no excuse not to vote. If you know, and so
Right. Yes, absolutely. We're waiting for it. Come on in. We'll get you an absentee ballot. You can vote it right there. It is counted by something in the township. They're all called the same, but we have what's called an absentee voter counting board. The absentee voter counting board counts all of these ballots that come in, and it'll be meeting in the Bloomfield Township Senior Center.
Right. Okay. And of course, if anybody's watching this in the township, come over to, I'd say City Hall. It's Township Hall.
Township Hall.
Township Hall. Once again, if anybody is interested, wants to do it, let's put that up. Look at that. You came prepared. This is good stuff. That's where you contact and city how to do it.
Yep,
Now,
right up there online, you can track everything about your ballot. It's the state-run site. Of course, you can call my office or send us an email, absenteevoter at bloomfieldtwp.org.
and it's too late to volunteer for this one, but you can volunteer going forward. That's right.
That's right.
Now, you talked about the county. I just want to hit that is that there have been past years. I remember in 20 when I ran, and we did not get the results until the next morning. And that was not your fault. That was nothing that the township did, or that it was a glitch at the county. We'll put it that way. If anything goes wrong and there's any problem, because you guys have always been the gold standard. As someone who has run for a number of offices, you guys almost have that stuff out at 9 o'clock. You guys really do. You're really good. How dependent are you on the county to get stuff done?
Well, everything is interconnected, and for instance, we can't start issuing ballots until the county gets us the ballots. There are deadlines for that, but in the end, regrettably, we're like the tail of the dog. We do have to wait for a lot of other people to get their things done. As an attorney, or even many other types of professions, one wants to work ahead, get ahead of the game. So, because of the deadlines, the way it's structured, and they're very tight. They allow, for instance, for litigation about who should be on the ballot, which we had some of that this year.
Oh, yes.
That means that when those deadlines hit, we all have to jump and really move on it. And 100%, what we are always striving for is election perfection. It happens by slowing down, working as a team, and bringing your A game every single day. And got amazing volunteers that help me on that, and amazing staff that makes it happen.
Well, the township has always been the gold standard for getting things done. Even, you could always count on getting back the precincts from the township before anybody else. So we're going to take a break here. We're talking with Martin Brook, who is the Bloomfield Township Clerk, on voting. This is, as we know, there's an election on, and it's a biggie, and you've got to be sure that your vote gets in, your vote counts, and the guy who makes it happen is Martin Brook. Don't go away. We'll be right back here on Eye on Oakland. Welcome back to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host, and we're talking with Martin Brook, who is the Bloomfield Township Clerk. And there's a little election contest going on right now, and we talked about how to vote. We talked about all the ways that you can do it. And now I'm going to ask, you had a couple of questions we talked to over the break about voting absentee at the precinct. How does that work?
Right. That is another feature that's new in Michigan law. An individual previously could only vote their absentee ballot by returning it to me, and the absentee voting counting board would count that. The counting board is made up of residents, your neighbors and friends who perform this task for us. The new way is that you can take that ballot and vote it, that ballot itself, and vote it during early voting or in the precinct. Previously, you'd have to spoil that ballot, get a new ballot issued to you. So what that means is you could take this ballot, you've been issued it, you could go home, study the races. It's a two-sided ballot, so it's fairly long. Fill it out at home, bring it back to the office completed, the precinct completed. And once they verify, you fill out your application to vote, verifying your identity. They verify the ballot was issued to you, you've got the right ballot. You can take that ballot and run it right through the tabulator. Best of both worlds.
Yes, well, and you can always check out the back where you've got the proposals and the millages and the university boards.
Several nonpartisan races.
Yes. And believe me, the millages and the proposals are always worth looking at. And then you also were talking about how to complete the ballot. That I've never found it that difficult, but I just vote for myself and be done with it. But
there's multiple ways to do it, and they each have their own lingo. So Michigan allows straight ticket voting. Mm-hmm. Straight party voting. So you could fill in the box at the top that records for the party you select the candidate in each partisan race. That's most of the first side of the page. And if you did straight ticket voting, you'd still have to vote on the nonpartisan races. As you mentioned, judges, university boards, the millages.
Precinct delegates.
And then you could, instead of just doing straight ticket voting, you could do a mixed ticket. And mixed ticket is you pick straight ticket voting, and let's say you pick Republican, but you want to vote for a Democrat in a particular race. And if you go to that race and select a different candidate, that would override the straight ticket vote.
It doesn't spoil the vote.
It does not spoil it. It's not an overvote. It overrides the straight ticket selection. And that's called a mixed ticket.
Interesting. I didn't know you could do that. I thought if you could split your ticket, you could go here, or you could go straight. I didn't know you could go straight and then vote as well for the other one.
Yes, you can.
I did not know that.
And in that race, in that particular race, it will override the straight ticket selection.
Uh-huh.
And before I was clerk, I would think, well, wait a minute, am I now overvoting because I picked, say, the Republican by filling out the straight ticket section, and then I picked a Democrat? Have I voted for two? The answer is no in that case. It's called a split ticket, and it's perfectly appropriate. The other name for voting is the mixed ticket. You skip the part about straight ticket, and then you just vote every race. And that, of course, works too.
Well, there used to be a bumper sticker that said, "My vote cancels your vote." Well, maybe my vote cancels my own vote, but...
It can. For instance, if you overvote in this race, if you overvote, let's say for Board of Trustees, Bloomfield Township Board of Trustees, you can pick 4. If you pick 5, that's an overvote, and that particular race, none of those selections would count at all. All the others would, but in that race, your vote would not be counted.
It says, vote no more than 4. They mean it.
The repercussions of that is that you've got essentially no votes in that section.
You're done. Yeah. That's no good. So now, one thing we talked about was getting ballots cast and turned in as one job. And how do you ensure that those ballots are genuine? I mean, that there is the ballot is connected to a qualified voter.
So there's a lot of security that goes into that. And first off, each ballot, in order for it to be counted, has to be live. So it's in my office. We've reviewed the applications. We've approved the signatures if they match. And then we issue a ballot to that person. Ballot to Chuck could be ballot number 1. Ballot to Martin could be ballot number 2. And then that ballot would come back. Outside the envelope is signed. You have to sign it. So we check that again. Mm-hmm. Is this Chuck Moss's signature? And we can proceed to receive that for counting. While it's waiting for the absentee voting counting board, it's kept in a locked cabinet in my office, so it's very secure.
I've seen those cabinets.
The building is locked, the building is alarmed, the police department's in the building, but on top of it, there are security cabinets within which all the ballots are kept.
I've seen those cabinets. As far as security goes, I think it's easier to get into the cash register.
Yeah. So they're very secure there. And the cabinets are on wheels. So when we go to counting day, the cabinet is not just locked, but also sealed with a numbered seal. And then it leaves with my team takes it to the senior center where the absentee voting counting board meets. And they then take the list that says, here's the seal number, and does it match the seal? That way we ensure that it was not tampered with when it left my office and before it arrived at the senior center. If it matches, they open it, and then they can start opening the envelopes. At that point in time, one of the first steps in the envelope process is they take the ballot inside the secrecy sleeve out of the envelope and then look at the serial number. And ballot number 1, Chuck Moss has to return ballot number 1. If he doesn't, we've got a whole other alternative process. It's going to be challenged, unless, of course, they could find that and we find this often, that Chuck Jr., living in the same house, was issued ballot 3. You filled his out, he filled yours out. If we can make that connection,
right,
they're going to both count. Otherwise, they'll go through in a challenge status.
Sure. Well, I was like the secrecy sleeve. It's like, I've got Chuck Moss signs outside 50 feet away. I mean, but, and not this year. So we can talk about it. But yeah, so the secrecy sleeve is like, I want people to know how I vote, but that's not true for everybody. Yeah, because election integrity, I think it gets more and more important. And this year it's very important. You lose an election, you lose an election. There's always next year. But if we lose faith in the integrity of the system, we're in a very bad place. So
100%. And I'm new in this role in 2020. And when I started, I practiced law for 25 years.
Yes.
So I'm used to looking analytically at everything and reviewing the law. I did that with regard to every feature and factor. And there's areas where we've increased security, such as these security cages. But the processes have always been tight. The steps and the double checking are secure. The people who work in precincts are a mix of Republicans and Democrats and independents. Nothing important happens without at least one Republican, one Democrat witnessing it. Again, the counting activity is done by your neighbors and friends, people you know, and it does rely on those folks to get it done right. So Michigan has a great process. It's very secure, very thorough. I'd also really like the fact that we tabulate paper ballots, and those paper ballots go through the machine. The machine, after the end of the day, transmits over wireless the results. And that happens after it prints out a results tape. That tape, as we go through this process, is balanced against what was transmitted. So if they transmitted 100 votes, the tape's got to show 100 votes. And so there's the checks and balances there. If there's a mismatch in any way between the tape and what was broadcast, which doesn't happen because the cellular network is very secure, then we got the paper ballots. The Board of Canvassers,
paper ballots are key.
Board of Canvassers can open it and count the paper ballots, and that would be determinative of that race. And of course, then we have a recount too process that can be engaged if needed.
Yeah, I know that now I keep hearing about overvotes, which are more ballots cast or voters registered than voting age citizens counted in the census. And this comes up every few years for elections. What's the story with that?
Well, they're completely apples and oranges. So our lists, when I mentioned 38,000 earlier, that does include roughly 4,000 people that are in a challenge status. So we had reason to believe they have moved, and we have sent them a notice of that. They go into a challenge status, and after 2 federal election cycles, they would be removed. We can't do it sooner because federal law requires this notice that we provide when we have information they may have moved, and the passage of time, which is 2 federal election cycles when they've not responded to the card or come in and voted. And when they came in, they would have to verify their address. So that process is ensuring that everybody that is registered is eligible. And then on election day, each person comes in and shows their identification. Very few people actually use the affidavit. It's very rare to see that happen. There's a handful, half a dozen to a dozen each election. And they go through the process in the precinct.
Well, yeah, I have to show my ID. I mean, you've got to show a valid picture ID to get into the Cedar, Michigan Polka Fest. So at the very least, you should be able to do the voting. Now, I'm going to be very boring and repetitious. For anyone out there who wants to vote, who's looking at this thinking, I want to vote, let's say again how we do it. You can come in person.
Oh, yes.
We've already done it. Let's do it again, just because.
You can apply for and receive an absentee ballot in the mail or in person in my office. You can return it at one of the 3 drop boxes that are two drive up and 1 walk up drop box outside. You can return it using the post office. You can return it to my office. Or you can return it right to the precinct directly and vote it yourself.
All right. So there's, no excuse.
No excuse. Let's see
not to.
everybody vote. I want to see
Yeah,
everybody vote.
Definitely. Now, this is your second big election now. I mean, you had baptism by fire in 2020, and so now you're a bit of a veteran. So what's the hardest part about putting this all together, do you think?
Organizing the 300 plus volunteers that get involved. And then perhaps the other thing tie with that would be staying on top of and tracking all of the legal changes. We've just had a lot in the last couple of years, but I'd say since 2016, there's been a fairly steady change in election rules. And so that's important, but the biggest thing really is the managing, assigning, and training the 300 people that come out and help on Election Day.
You're more of a general deploying. It's like I said, it's like it's like organizing D-Day. It can't be done overnight.
No, absolutely. And the individuals that do this, they take it very seriously. It's important. They want every ballot's like a nugget of gold. We all want each one to be treated accurately. So accuracy is always prioritized over speed. So I have to say this one thing. So for instance, if you've been mailed an absentee ballot and you don't use one of those methods I just mentioned for returning it, but instead you've lost it, misplaced it, just left it home, now we've got a little bit of an issue, and your voting experience is going to take a little longer. So be patient. Bring that absentee ballot back with you and vote it, or bring it back to the precinct and spoil it, because if it's left at home, they're going to send you back to get it. If you've lost it, you have to fill an affidavit saying I lost it. In both those instances, they've got to call my office to verify that ballot wasn't returned. Again, that's a security measure to make sure that someone isn't trying to game the system and be in person and vote absentee too. It's a security process. So it's up to you. I mean, if you want a seamless process, bring your completed absentee ballot to the precinct and vote it, or return it earlier. And just make sure that you don't leave your ballot at home, because it'll be sent back to get it, or lose it, and then you're going to fill out the affidavit. And that just takes extra time. They've got to call my office. We've got to review the records and make sure there's no record of this ballot being returned already.
Well, I don't think we have
be
time.
ready to wait.
I have one question about, if you want to write in a name, it has to be pre-registered, right? You can't just write in.
You can write in anybody, and people do. For that vote to count, you've got the person who's running as a write-in has to timely file their appropriate paperwork. And then then you have to, the person voting has to fill in the bubble next to the blank, and then write in the name. Both the bubble and the name have to happen.
Well, I mean, I always had heard that in every American election, from top to bottom, there's always someone who votes for Donald Duck. And I wanted to see whether or not anyone, and I wanted to see if anyone voted for Donald Duck instead of me, but they said they didn't keep records. All right.
No, we don't, because if the only way to keep a record is Donald Duck would have had to have filed the proper form.
Which is difficult because he is a resident of California, as far as I can see. All right. Well, thank you very much, Martin Brook, who is the Bloomfield Township Clerk, about this election, which is a biggie. We've given you the information on how to do it. There's no excuse not to vote, so get out there and vote. I'm Chuck Moss, and thank you for joining us here on Eye on Oakland.